Alright, my friends, today we're going to take a look at the introduction to our next unit, which is all on nomenclature. Now, nomenclature is just kind of a fancy word for how do we name and write formulas for the different chemicals in our universe, okay? We need both because when we talk to each other, when we write things down, we want to say things like sodium chloride, right, or potassium nitrate, or glucose, to call things, but the name doesn't always provide all the information. So writing the formula can give us more information because we can use some numbers and some symbolism in the formula to help us, one, shorten it down, and two, provide some numerical data or information about that compound, okay? So a formula is kind of like taking an acronym and a mathematical code and putting them together a little bit, alright? Now when we're working with nomenclature, it's important for us to realize that we're trying to increase the actual science literacy. So we're trying to figure out how can we talk to each other in a science language. So there's lots of rules with this. And really this unit is all about following rules. And can you apply the rules in a concrete and sequential way? If you can do that, this unit goes great for you. If you want to go rogue and just try to guess and figure it out, this unit can be really tough for some people, okay? So, what's the most important thing we gotta do then? Right? That's probably the number one thing. It's like, okay, Miss Jerson, what's the most important thing? The most important thing to remember is to determine what type of substance you are trying to name. Alright? This is the absolute most important thing because if you are trying to name an ionic compound and you don't actually have an ionic compound, you have a molecule, there's a different naming rules to it, okay? The analogy I always use is if your friend calls you up and says, hey, let's go do some sports. You're like, I like sports. Okay, I'll come do some sports. And you walk over to their house and you have basketball shorts on, some sneakers on, and a basketball. And they walk outside wearing a helmet and football shoulder pads. One of you is going to have a really bad day in terms of that sports. Okay? Because you didn't communicate with each other what sport you were playing and what the rules were going to be. Okay? Imagine if you tried to play hockey using the rules for soccer. Or if you tried to play volleyball using the rules for basketball. It would not work, right? Because you would be breaking all the rules all the time and it wouldn't make any sense, alright? So that's the idea about why is it so important that we know what we're naming, because there's different rules for different substances, okay? This year what we're going to tackle is molecules, ionic compounds, and acids. So there's 3 different naming systems that we have to work our way through, and 3 different set of rules we need to follow. Okay? How do we determine this? What do we gotta do? Well, it's actually a very simple question you need to ask yourself every time you take a look at a molecule or a compound or an acid. The first question is does it start with a metal? Okay, we know what metals are. So if it starts with a metal, then yes, your rules are going to be for ionic compounds, because all ionic compounds start with metals. That's actually a distinguishing thing about ionic compounds, is they begin with a metal. Okay? So, if it starts with the metal, then you follow the rules for ionics. If the answer is no, then you ask, does it start with hydrogen? Okay? If the answer is yes, it does start with hydrogen, then you're going to follow the rules for naming acids. Okay? And if the answer is still no, that means you are starting that molecule with some sort of non-metal that's not hydrogen, so that it's going to be just a simple molecule. Okay? So those are our 3 basic questions, or 3 different steps that we want to take a look at to how do we distinguish what a substance is. Okay? If it starts with metal, we got an ionic compound. If it starts with hydrogen, it's an acid. And if it starts with any other non-metal, we're going to deal with them as simple molecules. Now note, there's an entire another naming system when things are carbon-based, called organic chemistry, organic naming systems. We are not going to tackle organic naming systems here, so we're not going to see things like amino acids, glucoses, and ethanols, and propanes, that kind of stuff. That's a whole different system that it's not going to be for this particular unit. Okay? So we're focusing on these 3. Thank you.